Am I the a-hole for not wanting my husband's brother to be in the delivery room? I'm currently 31 weeks with twins, a boy and a girl. My husband and I are both 21, and we're trying for a baby for about a year before we fell pregnant. I've had a pretty rough pregnancy, and my brother-in-law is a medical student. He's 24, so has taken quite a lot of interest in my pregnancy and future delivery. We've always gotten on well. I've known my husband's family since we were children, so we've pretty much grown up together. A few days ago, my husband told me that my brother-in-law had expressed an interest in being there whilst they gave birth, mainly due to it being beneficial from an educational standpoint to see a natural multiples birth, which is what I'm planning for. I know things can change on that front, but hoping for that. Also, so my husband can have support as I'll have my mom. Worth mentioning that our hospital doesn't have a restriction on the amount of people can be in the delivery room. I said absolutely not. There is no way in hell I'm allowing that. I'm not even really keen on allowing my husband to watch me go through that, let alone his brother. He said it'd be a good experience for him at his degree, and I said that as much as I supported him, my experience of having a pleasant birth was my priority. He got defensive and said he should be allowed to have a support person too, which I suppose I do understand, but I really just feel uncomfortable about it all. He said it was just as much his right as it was mine to have someone there to support him. It basically turned into a huge argument, with his brother and mom being dragged into it too. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. I am actually creeped out that your brother-in-law even wants to be there. There is just something so wrong about it. You're the one who is about to have her vagina ripped apart while two humans shove their head and shoulders through it. What you say goes. Do not give in on this. Congratulations on having twins, and I wish you a smooth labor and delivery. Thank you so much. Just gonna hop on here and say I see tons of these posts. And it always takes me back to Grey's Anatomy when Callie was disagreeing with Arizona and Mark ganging up on her with the voting. So she gives the baby a vote. Since she carries baby, she votes for baby. And since her vagina is gonna push said human out, it gets extra special vagina vote. So she outvoted them. Tell him if that he is willing to get naked, lay on the dining room table, grab his ankles and let your dad stare at his a-hole for an hour. Then you will think about getting his brother in the delivery room. Birth is hard enough. Don't let him bully you into this. The only person who's important during birth is the one doing it. And as a doctor, his brother should know that a patient's desire trumps her extended family's. I would also let him know this decision is already final. And if he brings it up again or tries to sneak him in during, that he will not be welcome in the delivery room either. Not stay home. And if he thinks he needs a support person for him, then he needs to not be in the delivery room. His logic doesn't make sense. If his brother-in-law is there to support your hubby, then he won't be able to focus on learning. If his brother-in-law is there to learn, then he won't be able to focus on supporting hubby. Please note that I'm saying this as a father who was in the delivery room. You want as few people in the room as possible to avoid getting in the way if something goes sideways. In addition, most doctors aren't keen on having a medical student who is also family there because they might try to second-guess treatment and get in the way. If you really need an out, send a message to your birthing doctor and tell them to make a statement that they do not want anyone besides mom and dad in the room during the birth. That's another one of my concerns, actually. I love my brother-in-law, but he's a complete know-it-all. There's not a doubt in my mind that he'd try and instruct the doctors in some way. I'd be mortified. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay my husband for the burnt beefsteak I cooked for him? With a little update. My husband 30 and I 32 keep our finances separate and we do not share anything until and unless there's an agreement. He wants it this way, and I'm okay with that, although he can be strict with what's his and what's mine. Anyways, 2 days ago I brought home a raw steak cut and asked me to take time off work and work from home to cook it for him, and I said okay since he was a bit sick and exhausted. I prepared a steak and added all ingredients together, then put it inside the oven, then stopped by the bedroom where he was lying in bed playing on his phone and told him I had to go back to work and the steak was in the oven and he needed to turn it off in exactly 10 minutes so it wouldn't get overcooked since he hates it overcooked. 40 minutes go by and my husband rushes in freaking out telling me he just checked on the steak and it was completely burnt. He asked why I didn't turn off the oven 10 minutes after I notified him, and he says to me that he was busy harvesting the strawberries in the game he was playing. I just shrug and tell him this is on him then for being on his phone distracted and letting the meat burn. But he says to me, well, no doubt it's your fault because when you start something, you finish it, and you were supposed to finish cooking the steak. I immediately reminded him I agreed to take valuable time off work to cook for him when I didn't have to and when he was playing on his phone, so he should be grateful. He gets more upset and says that I need to pay X amount for the steak since I bought it from the butchers, so it's high quality and like the supermarket. But I said no, this is not my responsibility. He then tells me that yes it is, and that I should think of it as I took money from his salary and burned it. Not to mention that he gets no dinner, therefore I owe him. I lash at him telling him no and get out of my office so I could finish my work, since my time is valuable as well as his precious steak and he was wasting it. He keeps insisting I pay for the price of the steak and even said I was wrong for refusing to take responsibility and correct my mistake and just pay. Because he wants to buy another cut of steak but does not plan on using his money again, because why should he? He wasn't the one who cooked and let the steak burn. Am I the a-hole? Added to explain that separate finances is his idea, and the reason for that is that he was married to a woman out of the US, and she took all his money and belongings once they got separated. In an illegal way, of course. Thus, he now feels uncomfortable to share finances with another partner, which, like I said, is okay with me since I have many married friends with separate finances who are living happily. Not today, home. Tell him to eat the freaking strawberries he was busy harvesting. Opie, stop babying him. Stop taking care of him. Stop doing special favors. He does not value you. This argument is ridiculous. He was playing on his phone and wanted you to cook for him? Why did you say yes? It sounds like your husband is used to getting what he wants. When was the last time he did something considerate for you? Not today, Hall, but maybe it's time for some counseling for you to work and why you feel it's okay for him to make demands of you while you were working. I'd send him a bill for the time it took out of work to prep his steak and argue with him, if it's going to be like that. Separate finances is one thing. This nickel and dime nonsense doesn't sound sustainable. How long are you going to give him to decide that you're not his ex? Oh boy, where to start? 1. Incapable of recognizing he made a mistake. 2. Incapable of completing a simple task because he was doing something inconsequential. 3. Trying to flip blame on you. 4. Incapable of acknowledging the importance of your work and your time, much less respecting it. 5. Am less bothered by your division of finances, and more concerned by how he penny pinches when it benefits him. Honestly, it seems you should go for a walk by yourself and take a step back, to carefully reevaluate what other red flags you have ignored, and if this way of life is worth it. Don't plan on potential, plan based of what's already there. Agreed. He's deflecting anything bad to Opie while failing to respect her time at work. Eek. When you divorce the strawberry harvesting and grateful for your efforts and unable to tell time aficionado of fine beef products, you have to get the best lawyer you can afford, because he is going to try so hard to nickel and dime you. Make him sorry. Not today, Hall, and I'm sorry you are unappreciated. Go out and buy yourself a personal-sized fine steak and make it yourself. And don't share. Little update. Too many people on here commenting and I can't read every single comment. But I just wanted to say that I showed my husband a thread and he wanted to tell you guys something. But I didn't let him touch the phone and type by himself because I know how rude he can be online. So I'm just presenting a more civil version of what he wanted to say. He says that he thinks the comments he's seen are being unfair to him and completely pushing aside the fact that A, paid money for his steak cut, and B, that I agreed to cook, and so he thinks I should have finished the favor. He also says that I left out a part where I suggested he get a cheaper steak from the supermarket. I did, which was offensive because he spends time driving to the butcher's and money to buy a fresh steak, and eating at a steakhouse is expensive. Also, he says to the top comment that he doesn't like freaking strawberries. That is why I can't eat them. I think that's enough. He's pressuring me to give him my phone so he could type out what he wants to say, but I believe all the relevant info is here. I'll update if possible. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for sternly telling my wife I get to invite whoever I want whenever I want to my house? My wife is a stay-at-home mom while I work full-time. We have 2 kids that I help do 50% of their care while she handles cooking and cleaning and the other 50% of childcare as well. I'm sociable by nature and I'm fast at making friends, whether at work or outside of it. The problem my wife has is that I invite friends and co-workers, guests, over every few days to my house for dinner or lunch. Restaurants aren't an option now due to budget. My wife said she has to cook for my guests, though I never tell her to cook this or that, nor ever complain about her choice of meals because it depends. The guests eat whatever she feels like cooking, yet she complains that she has to cook for extra people, which takes effort and time. And also, since I sit with the guests, then she has to serve them by bringing coffee, / preparing the table, / etc. since I told her I don't do these chores. But I thought that since this is her area of responsibilities, then where's the problem? I invited few guests for Thanksgiving, 6 people, and when she found out, she lost it, saying I should have consulted her first. I said there was no need, because they just eat whatever she cooks, no problem. But she said she wasn't going to agree to cook a large portion and for 6 extra people. Aside from serving them and handling hosting, that is too much for her. I told her she was making a big deal out of it, and should just stop freaking out over a few extra plates and glasses and whatnot. She said she didn't agree, but then I eventually had guests over, and after they left, she started yelling at me saying she was not minded my guests' server, and that I should stop having them over. That is when I told her very sternly that it's my house, and I get to invite whoever I want whenever I please, and called her unreasonable to react like that, instead of being welcoming to the people who wanted to spend time with us, unlike her family cut us off completely. But she shouted that she was done with being on my beck and call, and having to be forced to take care of my guests in terms of serving and cooking, just because it's her part of chores. That if I want to continue to have guests over, then I'll have to step up and cook for them myself, which I thought was quite rude and unfair for her. We went back and forth in this argument, and she then stopped talking to me and started giving me the silent treatment, making me feel like I'd committed some sin by having guests over. Info: I just wanted to explain that my wife's main issue isn't about cooking itself, but having to cook extra for the guests, which is understandable, and I try to compromise by suggesting we set time limits for when my guests visit to avoid having to include them in dinners and whatnot. It also suggested we limit the frequency of those visits. But she stated she will still have an issue with it, and gave me the options of either handling the hosting myself, or just completely stop having them over or take them out to restaurants. But then restaurants consume money, and she was the one who advised against going to restaurants. Now for the comments. Bro, you're the a-hole, especially if you aren't helping. You're doubling or tripling her workload of keeping a regular house while you sit on your butt, while expecting her to take up all the slack of meeting the expectations of a proper host. It's also apparent that you don't cook, because there is a significant difference in cooking for, let's say, 4 people, and cooking for 10 people. Just because they will eat what you cook doesn't mean that you have nearly triple the amount she needs to make. And then on top of that, it made more complicated as many dishes take longer to prepare properly if you need to make large quantities. Never mind all the dishes and extra work after the meal, which, let me guess, you don't help with those either. Seriously, if you don't understand the complexity of the work she does, you can shut the hell up or do it yourself. Because I'm certain if she refused to feed your guests, you'd be the first to decry how poorly she's behaving as a wife and hostess. Oh wait, she did threaten that, and now you are decrying it's her responsibility. Where do you think the food she is cooking anyway comes from? Do you believe she has the power of Jesus and is able to feed 10 people from the amount of food that would normally only feed 4? Do you even know how to use the oven and stove? The sin isn't having guests over. The sin is not understanding the work your wife does in the household, and not understanding that while all you do is eat the food, how much work goes into preparing a good meal, being a good host, and all the cleanup afterwards. And then when your wife explains it to you being too much of an a-hole to figure out that feeding all of your friend is a lot of extra work, even if she isn't changing the menu for the day. If you don't even have the ability to cook at her level for 10 plus people at a time, you definitely better shut the hell up. Your wife is completely in the right here. Jesus, man. Absolutely you're the a-hole. How did you do a Reddit post from 1953? Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for tricking my husband to coming to a school event and inviting her to my house? My mother and husband hate each other. That's the most basic way to put it. Truth is that my husband feels that he is treated as less than my other sibling spouses because of his skin color, and my mother feels that he is way too dumb for my standards. However, I personally feel that my mother does not show any favoritism or harsh treatment of my husband. Because of this, my husband cannot stand my mother and has recently begun to even be in the same room as her. Oh, your mom's going to be at Christmas. I'm going to a friend's house. Oh, your mom's going to the kids' event? I'll just stay at home. Frankly, it's insanely demoralizing for me, and I hate my husband when he backs out of something just because my mom is going to be there. And it's worse when he demands that my mom not go, because he wants to be there. In my opinion, he's the one with a big issue. He should be the one to leave the kids' events. Recently, one of my kids was having a big football match and he wanted his father there. My mother also wanted to be there, so I tried telling my son that he couldn't have his father there. He was adamant, so I told my husband that my mother was not going to be there. He arrives, and obviously so does my mother, and they are immediately bickering. He makes a comment about how racist my mother is, and then she fires back saying she was never racist. I told them to shut up and sent my husband to sit somewhere else for a while. I decided that since the game ended late, I'll bring my mom back to my home and make her some dinner. My husband threw a hissy fit over this, and was screaming about me always choosing my mother over him. And I was like, of freaking course I'm going to put my mother over my husband. She's the woman who single-handedly raised me and 3 other kids. She's literally a goddess for not giving some of us for adoption. My husband stormed out and I'm left wondering if I've done something wrong. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. She thinks it's stupid. Why? Your son asked for his dad to be there, not your mother. Sounds like you're the one with a favoritism issue, considering you decided to have mom there anyway. Edit. I skipped over the last part. Holy hell. She's a goddess for not giving you or your siblings for adoption? Get your head out of your mother's bottom. Yes, Opie's drunk a narcissist Kool-Aid. Either that or the mother wrote this. Info. Why and how does your mother's wish take precedence over your son and your husband? This entire post is fully insane, but this one is truly bewildering. Your son wants his dad there, not his grandma. So why is she trying to uninvite dad instead of grandma? I truly hope her poor husband escapes her and takes the kids too.